everyone, in the next couple of weeks, we have some churches we're going to. So if you want to come and join us and worship with us, we are going to be at these churches. Velocity Church Perth, we are playing this Sunday. This Sunday at 10 o'clock. And actually, on top of that, I will be preaching because it's my home church and I'll be preaching for the first time. So come and support us. I'm excited to see Sam preach in his own church. Yeah. It'd be pretty cool. So come and support us. We also are playing at Freo Baptist Church on the 8th of August as well. Yep, Fremantle Church, 8th of August. Sanctuary Baptist Church on the 31st of August. 31st of August. And an undisclosed big deal thing happening in September. But we'll have to announce that later. Yes. We're also playing at Austin Cove as well. In October as well. So it's even further away. Plenty of opportunities to come and see us worship and have a great time at different churches. So make sure you come, especially this Sunday. Yeah. Especially this Sunday. Sweet. And now to the podcast. A quick switch. To the podcast. You know what I think we should do? What? I think, right, we'll play... Why am I already starting to laugh? I don't know. We'll play the intro clip in a sec, but I think we need to come up with a theme song for the podcast. Yeah. All right. So I think we should come up with it now. We can record it properly afterwards or whatever, but let's come up on the spot. With the podcast theme song, and then we'll drop the title card and do that thing over the top of it. Okay, all right. Here we go. Right. Make creative, make creative, make creative, make creative, make creative, make creative. This is the Make Creative podcast. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo! That was sick. Can we just do it live every time? All right. And it changes every time. It slightly changes every time. That sounds good. No doubt, because there's no way I'm going to be able to do that again. Ow, I just hit my head. This is going good. Hello and welcome to the Make Creative Podcast, your monthly podcast of creativeness. My name is Sam. And my name's Connor. And we have with us the wonderful, the incredible, the amazing Joel. Hello. There we go. My goal in life now with these podcasts after last time is just to make Joel laugh and make it sound like someone's laughing. He's got such a nice laugh. It's just so, I don't know, it's like a fulfilling laugh. It's tasty. It's done it already. That's the podcast. See you next month. You know, it's kind of one of those laughs that, like, it like restores you. Restores your soul, does it? Yeah, a little bit, a little bit, like, it's just like, you're like, you know what? I want to laugh along, I want to laugh with it, Yeah, sure. Leading by laughter. I like that. Leading by laughter. Oh, that's joy of the Lord is my strength. Yeah. I wonder if there's any like Christian comedians out there that would, want to come on the podcast. I mean, I'd be down. I'd be down. Yeah. If you're a Christian comedian and you would like to be on the podcast, send us a message. Why not? Why not? Why not? You could be with us and make us laugh. And you can make Joel laugh, which is restoring. It's restoring. All right, Connor, what are we talking about today? All right, guys, so we've got a cool topic today, actually. We are going to be talking about what it is to start a ministry. So I know Sam's been doing that a lot recently. Sam's been getting more and more engaged with starting ministries within his church, which is exciting. And obviously, Make Creative is a ministry that we started. It's true. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there with some great ideas that they want to bring to their church, but don't really know exactly how to go about that. Yeah. So, starting something can be difficult. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Not always easy. Yeah. And it can be as simple as, starting a team. Yeah. Starting, a bunch of people from your church, you want to go play volleyball on a Friday night, and just getting people together and trying to figure out what it takes to get that involved and get that started and get the ball rolling. Yeah, for sure. All right. So, what's your experience in starting a team? Obviously, or starting something, a ministry. Obviously, like Make Creative is one of your. Have you ever done anything like that besides that? Yeah, for sure. Starting a ministry, I've been involved in a lot of different ministries out there, and in being involved in running music teams as well for other churches before Make Creative. And I think one of the first step, if you want to get people involved within your church, it's to talk to your pastor. That's true.
That's the first step.
helpful.
Not only are they, pastors are essentially effectively they're trained to get people together and fellowship and talk and whatever, and then they run teams or they're running their church. So if you want to start something small within that church, that's like generally such a good way to start because they're super helpful.
Yeah.
I know. So Andrew is the young adults pastor at Riverton. And if I have an idea or something like that and I just want to run it by him, I do that because usually he's got really good advice. I also go to Sam. Sam's got great advice as well. And it's really good to start a ministry with that in mind and having someone behind you with just feeding you with some ideas that you can help in. Or they might know someone who's also feeling that way. You never know. There could be another person within your church that feels the way you do, and then he can be like, cool, I'll put you two together, and then you can start this movement.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. I mean, so, sorry. For starting, I think there's a difference between starting a program and starting a ministry.
Yeah.
They're two separate things. And so what I would say is that for Made Creative, for example, and for some of the stuff that I do at work as well, way more interested in starting a ministry than a program, if that makes sense. And fundamentally, there's a big difference between the two because you can run a youth group on a Friday night or you can run a youth ministry. And one of those can encompass both of them and one can't. So running, a youth ministry, yes, you can have a Friday night, but it's more than that. It's about the discipling and the mentoring and the doing life groups and all this sort of stuff as well. It's about ministering for people as opposed to doing a group or a program, which is just we're going to do this thing every week, and whether it has something to do with God or not, that's up for debate. But I guess I should probably talk about some of the experience I have. So for those that don't know, I started at a new church within the last 3 or 4 months now.
Something like that.
Yeah, and they brought me on to start a youth ministry. And so I'm the youth pastor and there's no youth ministry at the moment.
Yeah, okay.
I'm starting it from scratch. And so that's really challenging when you have to start something from scratch. A lot of people inherit things. A lot of people inherit.
It's close enough.
Yeah,
it's close enough.
You get what I mean? They
inherit.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. That word, youth groups or worship ministries or all these sorts of things, people often take over something that's already been there. And there's some awesome things about that. Pre-established stuff is awesome. Also some negatives as well about culture that's come through from the past. But when you're starting something from scratch, the negative is there's nothing there, right?
Sure.
The positive is you get to set the culture, you get to set what we do and all that sort of stuff. And so that's been the challenge when I've been working at Velocity. But I think Made Creative is probably a great example as well of starting a ministry because when me and Connor started out, it was just us two.
Yeah.
And it was really just us two writing songs together. And we wanted to build this into something bigger. And so we had to go out and we felt like, I think fundamentally one of the most important things is if you want to create a ministry, it's got to be God-centered and God-called.
Definitely. Absolutely.
That's the biggest thing. Is
just be honest with yourself and your motivations, and that will really tell you what it is, because
and God uses passion. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes we're starting something for the sake of starting something instead of starting something because we feel like God's in it and He's moving us in a way. And one of the key things that I think is really helpful in that process of working out is God doing something in what you're doing that goes beyond your ability? And so you have to act in faith. Because I feel like a lot of the time when we start things, we try and keep it within our own ability. And so God works with us in our own ability, but really He calls us to work in faith, not in ourselves. And He calls us to greater things. And so working out what God's doing wherever you're starting something and working in faith, not necessarily in what you know sometimes, though working in what you know is really good, but working beyond what you know is really helpful to understand whether God is really pushing that stuff forward. So for us with Made Creative, we started writing songs and we felt like God was in it. So we took the next step and we started to get people together, and we found that God was bringing people to us.
Yeah, and
we
also like something else that for me was really felt really very apparent is that doors were constantly opening for us.
Yeah. And that's what I mean is like we would do a step and then we would see those doors open, and then we would do another step then we would see those doors open. And we very much have felt from the beginning like God was propelling us forward, not just, like it wasn't just us like banging on a door trying to break it down or something.
Yeah. And it's very much that, isn't it? It's the as the doors open, and it's not, we're never jumping too far ahead.
Yeah.
Although I would say most of the time we're definitely, as you say, we're getting pushed, because it's like a lot of it's like, we're not ready to record yet. But then we just went for it and we did it, and we come up stoked.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, it's fun to like, fantasize about the future of Made Creative and what it will be, and what it will become, but also taking, we're on God's schedule, not our schedule. And like these dreams that we have, they will come to fruition.
Yeah.
But patience is obviously an important part.
That's why working in faith is fundamentally more important than necessarily working in your own abilities as well. Because as you get propelled forward, if you're doing it in faith with God and relationally with God, you are able to actually do well when you're propelled forward. If you're working in yourself, you start to get too stretched and things start to fall apart on you. And that can be really difficult in those things. And so we would have these things happen for us as we started doing things like band members come in and that we didn't even know that have been phenomenal, and, like things happening with recordings and all this sort of stuff, churches coming to us, and we didn't have to talk to a church. They just came to us, really. Stuff like that. And it's going like, well, this is truly God, and we're just going to say yes and amen and go with it because he's obviously doing something. And so that was one of the biggest things, was working in faith, knowing that he was propelling us forward, and then being able to look back and say, well, God has done all these things, so he's going to do greater things. That this isn't our best act of faith, our best marker is not just that he paid for an album, but we're actually believing for more than that. We're believing for greater things, that was a stepping stone to greater things, and it builds our trust. So I work under the theological idea that faith isn't a muscle you build. Faith, God is always faithful to his people and the promises of his people. It's how much you trust God, right? And so the more that you can see that God has been faithful to you, the more you can rely on that to step into greater things where he again has to show that he's faithful to you, again delights in showing you how faithful he is to you.
And then hand in hand, that will grow your ministry as you go along, and as you go along with that, it will grow your ministry.
Absolutely. So like God sending someone and paying for our album, because it really was God that had that. Obviously, we've told the story heaps, and like Joel's involved and all that, but it is God who did that. That for me now becomes the benchmark for what he can do in the future. Yeah. And so now that we're not just started from scratch anymore, we're living in the faith of what's already been, hoping for more and trusting for more in him. And that's the big thing is finding those sort of things in your story as you go, because when it's small, it can be really difficult. When it feels like there's not a lot of people, let's say in a youth ministry, that can be really hard to do consistently. Yeah. And being able to see where God has been faithful, even if it's one kid coming along every week, or a leader that is really committed, or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that is then the thing that you hold on to and say, well, God is faithful, and I'm going to trust that he's going to do more things. And I think that's really helpful no matter where you start in ministry.
Yeah, wherever you are in the ministry process. So understanding like what your ministry is about, obviously is a super important part. Also, we've got Talk to a pastor is another advice point we got. Talk to a pastor. They will get you involved with something, or there could be already a ministry that's kind of already ongoing that you maybe didn't know about.
Yeah. So you can jump on.
So let's say you've talked to your pastor, and your pastor's like, "That's a great idea."
Yep.
And your ministry that you've chosen to get involved in is God-centered. Where do you go from there?
I think depending on whether you're leading it or you're helping, there's a difference. If you're a helper, it's just about learning. If you're helping somebody else with a ministry that's starting out or is kind of ongoing and you've jumped in, a lot of it is just learn to be the best you can in that position. One of the things about Made Creative that I really like and have to keep reminding people of, because it's a core value to me in this ministry, for example, and I think it's a core value for Velocity, where I work as well, is that we always want to learn more and get better. And you can say that and people go, like, you're aiming for perfection. No, I'm actually aiming for excellence, that I'm giving my best to God. And so I never want to say that this is the best I have to offer.
That's right. Because you can always get better. Sure. Yeah. It's like, it's like one of those things. I'm okay with not being perfect. Like, I'm not perfect and I will never be perfect. Yeah. But every time I learn something, I go, all right, cool. I want to know more though.
Exactly.
I was actually talking to a friend of mine the other day about this, and we're sort of talking about music and guitar. And as a musician, when you're like learning to play guitar, for example, you never feel like you're getting better.
Yeah.
You never feel like, oh, I'm a good guitarist, because what happens is you go from your inspiration, or the person you used to listen to or advice was like a basic guitar player. And you learned that stuff, and then naturally you've sort of grown to hear and learn more stuff, and you just keep taking on all that thing, but you never doesn't feel like you're moving, but what is changing essentially is your goalposts are actually coming in closer and closer.
Yeah. And I think people, I've noticed this a lot in church ministry now that I've worked in it for a while. People will learn up to a point, and I'm guilty of this too, by the way, learn up to a point, and then they're not willing to learn past that point. That, like, I know enough now. I don't have to keep growing.
I've figured out the way I'm going to do things. So I'm not going to learn more. Everything's going to work around this mindset.
Exactly. Now. And that's never helpful for actually growing a ministry. Like the ministries that grow are the ones where they say, like, we are going to continue to learn and grow together and build relationship and build our skills and all these things. I was talking with Joel and my pastors, because he came in the other day, and he said, that he has learnt more and more and more and has grown and wants to continue growing. But also he said, I recognized that when I was younger, before I went to TAFE with Sound, that I thought I knew everything.
Yeah.
And then TAFE kind of knocked that out of him. And Bible college does the same for pastors as well. But it's the not having the arrogance of, I think I know everything.
Yeah, that's right.
It's, no, I want to grow and continue to grow. And I think that's a big thing, regardless of whether you start a ministry or join or something, is like, never think that you have all the answers. One, because you should be acting out of faith anyway. So like, God is going to stretch you in that.
Yeah.
And it's the comfortability that's kind of a problem, because we get complacent sometimes. But two, it can breed a bit of arrogance and a bit of pride. And that's not something you ever want when you're doing ministry, because people want authenticity, and people are drawn to authenticity more than they are to someone who's like, I'm the bee's knees. And so we're all still learning and growing. But
definitely,
that is something about Made Creative team, which we've been consistent about, is do not just stay where you are, but be someone who wants to learn and to grow and to do greater things. And, I took on editing, never edited before.
Yeah, sure.
Because that was part of it, and learning to get better at that is,
exactly.
You have all those examples.
And the thing is, I mean, everything, everything is a huge learning curve, no matter how much experience you've had in the past.
Yeah.
Like, I've had experience with running businesses in the past, but this is so different.
Yeah.
And so, like, when it comes to all the like legal side of things, I had to go through all of that, trying to figure out everything and how it worked.
Yeah.
And it is, it is complicated.
Yeah. For sure.
Because that's just the way the legal system is. but it's about humbling yourself and being like, you know what, I don't know this, and I'm going to step into it, and I'm going to try and learn and understand the ins and outs of everything, basically.
And then for someone who's leading, because I think that's true for either, but for someone who's leading a new ministry, we can get really trapped in the thinking about it and never actually doing. I know, like recently, I've started to get edgy in my work because I feel like I haven't done anything yet, but I've been preparing. But good preparation is always super important. But action is also important as well. So don't get trapped in the I'm just preparing. I'm preparing, because you've got to do and be prepared to work things out in the way. I feel like one of the things we tried to make clear with Made Creative is like you're coming on the journey with us as we work towards being a better version of this.
And
like, we're not worked out, and we never.
And I think it's apparent in like the way we I guess we talk to each other and we like actually communicate and whatever. We're just like, at the end of the day, we're on this journey together. We're all just, we're all just friends. Yeah. And we muck around, we have fun, we have a laugh, we're silly sometimes. And then with that comes along the like, it sort of humbles everyone. No one's putting up this fake facade of, I know what I'm doing here, you have to listen to me. Like, the fact is that we are all learning and we are all gradually figuring things out.
And one of the things, like, self-evident on our YouTube page is our first video was far less better quality than what our current videos are, sound-wise or video-wise, editing-wise, like all that stuff. Like that we're prepared to grow, and we weren't ready when we started doing videos, but we knew that we needed to start doing it, and that part of the thing would be growing into that, and people coming with us as we grew into that and learned and grew. So I think that's like a big thing as well.
I think another point I'd make about in terms of the leadership thing is like, quite often people can get, as you say, get caught up in their own ability. Yeah. And you have to understand that if God's given you the blessing of having an amazing sound guy, or having a super musically educated people within your band that can actually just go and really just fill out all the stuff that you need to do, you have to depend on them. And like that dependency, in the same way that they depend on you when it comes to other things. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's important, is when you're running a ministry like that, don't worry about being the one that organizes everything. Just talk to them and be like, let's organize this together. Plus, that gets everyone involved as well. And if you're involved in the ministry directly, then it just helps you be a part of that, because you're responsible basically for what it's doing.
And we're guilty of this, but being a good leader isn't necessarily about doing everything.
Yeah, I'm particular. I would say I'm very guilty of this.
Yeah, it's actually about the people and leading people and teaching people and discipling people. It's not about doing the practicalities all the time. And so a lot of it is empowering people to do what they do, and to trust in God and to do it in their ability with the faith aspect with God, and you're the one encouraging them along on that journey. Obviously that gets difficult depending on how big what you're doing is, and smaller means you do more practical things. But I think we can all be guilty of it, doing things instead of allowing people to learn and grow. But that's a big thing. Hey, it's like, it's really difficult to do.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, you want it to be, the best that you can make it as you're going around and learning things and trying to understand things. Yeah. And you just want to, you just want to keep adding to that and keep adding. Yeah. It's also, just like, take things in small measures. Yeah. And pass the parts on so that you can build at the same time. Because it doesn't help at the end of the day if someone is so overloaded.
One of the other key things that I think we're going to be transitioning to personally in Made Creative, and also, it's something I've thought about a lot, and it goes with what we're doing is ministry, not a program, right?
Yeah. So can we talk about that a bit more and define the difference a bit more?
Sure. So ministry involves more than just running a program. Ministry involves discipling people. It involves, basically it's the God-centered approach to everything. So if you're in a worship team, if you're the leader of a worship team, your role isn't just to play on a Sunday. It's actually to disciple and teach and deal
grow.
with the people and grow with your team. And so it's discipling worship leaders and teaching them how to be worship leaders. And it's about, introducing new songs, sure, but also teaching people on the worship team how to worship, for example, so that it's not just you're doing a performance, but you're worshiping. It's all the stuff surrounding the practicality, if that makes sense, because the practicality is important. And we do that stuff, but if it's just the practical program, it's not going to be as effective as if we're doing it relationally altogether, because we serve a God who's relational. He's relational in himself. The Trinity is relational within themselves, and they are our example for how we are relational as people with God and with each other as well. So that's the difference between ministry. But one of the things that I think, and I think it's something that we as Make Creative will need to start doing as well, is like whatever the ministry is, but let's take Make Creative example, is now that we have some new members, and a lot of our members are younger than us. We're probably the oldest ones.
We are. Yeah. We are the oldest ones.
One of the things that we as Make Creative need to start working on is working on the discipleship and the learning aspect within the worship space.
And I think I would say that's already started.
It's already started.
But the thing is, it's like
being a bit more intentional about it would be what I would say, because we have new members who are quite younger, and they need to be discipled into strong worship people.
Exactly.
We have people that have all the talent in the world, but one of the things they need to learn is the worship side of things,
That's right.
So it's about that side of things that is kind of our next steps as well in leadership, because for us, it's not just about writing some songs. It's about we lead a team, that team needs to love Jesus just as much as we do, and God needs to be the center at all points, including when we worship. And it's one of the biggest things that I think can be a challenge, because when you go week to week, you start to just
do the routine of it.
You get the routine and the practicalness, and the intentionality is what's important.
Yeah, because when it reminds me of when we had Pastor Wayne on the podcast, and we're sort of talking about the sermon is not the main job of the pastor.
No.
It's like, the 30 minutes on a Sunday. That's not what a pastor does or is.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's writing the sermon as well.
Yeah.
But the pastor of a church is doing that. It's engaging people. It's discipling people. It's getting people involved in things. And effectively, the church, a church is, or in a sense, a ministry.
Yep.
And there's people within that have sub ministries. I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I'm preaching this week, and I'll probably spend a minority of my work hours actually writing that message. Most of that other stuff goes to people and meetings and all that sort of stuff. But I think because I'm starting a youth ministry, when I was a youth, I was discipled really well by people, and I'm standing on the shoulders of people who discipled me really well, who allowed me to preach, who allowed me to do worship, who did all these things with me. And it was that intentionality about it over years and years of time with them that enabled me to go into ministry, to do Make Creative, to do all these things. It's not just I wanted to do all these things. No, it was I got built into. And one of the key things about starting a ministry is it could be 3 people. It could be a life group with 1 or 2 other people. It could be, a worship team with 2 people. It could be whatever it is. It could just be a couple of people. But the intentionality of discipling with them is fundamentally what's going to help your ministry the most, and allowing them to grow in what they are passionate about and what they love and what God is doing in them is so important. And them learning relationally how to relate to God is a big thing as well,
definitely.
That is a responsibility that as a leader, you take on some responsibility about how people relationally are with God as well, because while they make their own choices, you're an influence in their life. And, when I don't talk about this much, but when I preaching is both a privilege, a joy, but a burden, because when you think about preaching, you realize you're talking about God to people and they're learning from it. And that's a burden.
It is, because if you have to be a vessel.
Yeah.
Essentially, you have to humble yourself and
Yes.
be like, not of my knowledge, but of God.
But also, you have to care enough to be able to do it right.
Yeah.
Because if you do it wrong, you're messing with God's word. And it's the same with writing a worship song. If you think about it, it's also a burden, as much as it's lovely, but you're taking scripture and you're writing a song about it. And if it's incorrect, people are going to be singing it in a congregation incorrectly. And they learn from worship. And that's a burden. And so as leaders, discipling people to be able to do things well, to respond well, to read well, to worship well, to be in relationship with God is a burden. A good burden, but it is a burden and a responsibility that we bear. And it doesn't matter if you're an electric guitar player in a worship band, or it doesn't matter if you're the helper for a kids' church thing,
or the ushers at the,
or the ushers. It is something where you have a responsibility to lead people well.
Yeah.
And how you act on and off stage, on and off ushering, on and off kids' church matters because of that.
One of the huge things, this is an example of that, is that as the worship band, I used to do this pre-pandemic because we have to clean the seats now. But once I would be done with the band and stuff, I would go down and start packing up chairs, because every single person at that church is now looking at you and being like, oh, they're actually setting an example. I'm at the front of the church, right? So I'm setting an example for everyone else.
Yeah.
And in that way, you actually help disciple people, saying, you know what, like, hang on, like Connor's up the front and I'm so used to, the people being up front, they sit in the background, they don't do anything. But he's actually like going and packing up chairs. Same with Pastor Wayne. I see Pastor Wayne packing up the chairs. And that is discipling people, because it's saying, oh, well, if the pastor's doing it, then I should be doing it too.
Yeah.
And it's about sometimes in terms of your ministry, you end up being role models for most people in the church. So it's really important that you are discipled well by either a leader, or you're discipling people well and you're being clear and concise, because effectively that will be passed on to whoever you are in front of, or you are your ministries for.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm not perfect at this, and you're not either. And sometimes we walk in even to practice and we're just not at our best. And there's times where we act out of our own selves, and that I totally understand that. And it happens. And I'm sure our band can tell you many times where I've acted out of my own self and where I'm at and not in the way that I should. But even in practice, even beforehand, even in getting people to pray beforehand, all of that stuff, what we should be as leaders is being the example. Like the mucking around and having fun in the right way is still being an example.
Yeah, exactly.
Intentionally praying and saying we have to pray as part of it.
And prayer is, I would say, prayer could be almost be its own point in this. Prayer, like, we
don't pray enough. That's what I think. Is I don't pray enough.
If you're starting a ministry and you want, and it's a God-centered ministry, and you've talked to your pastor about it, and you want to get things started, and you've gathered a team of people that you are discipling. The best way that you can disciple people is just praying with them. Because you pray with them, and it not only brings you into focus your thoughts and what you're feeling in terms of to God, but it also brings in theirs. And then with that, you can actually, like, it's such a great avenue way. It's like you've come together with your ministry, with your team of people before God, and you're saying, God, take this ministry and use it.
And there's a big part of being in community with God. Like God wrote stuff to us personally, but he wrote a lot of stuff to community. And he is in community with himself. It's not just God the Father, it's God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Holy Spirit, yep.
And doing community aspect of that stuff is critical. And there's so much more we could talk about, but I feel like that's a good place to start. But, loving God and putting him right in the middle of everything is probably fundamentally the most important thing.
The most important thing.
Is not getting so excited about a program that we forget to put God in the middle and let him do what he wants to do. Because that's one of the other things is we have wanted to do all these things, but the truth is we let God do what he wants to do, and we just kind of like, please take our hand and let us.
And it's been like interesting because like I've had several meetings with Andrew, several meetings with Wayne, just, you know, talking about Make Creative when we started, when we got it all started. You know, we just wanted to chat to it and like see what it was and see how it works. And and they were encouraging. Yeah. Ultimately they were encouraging. They were like, we want you to, we're encouraging you to do this because we think it's a great idea. Now, obviously, like you have to understand with certain ministries, they can take on like, you know, you could, and not necessarily in a bad way, but you could become a burden for the church in some senses where you are, because obviously, you know, no one ever starts off ministry and it's massive. Yeah. You know, you start small and you grow from that. So having, if you do, it's just why I think it's also important to talk to your pastor, because effectively somewhere along the line, your ministry will become some sort of burden, which is obviously not a bad thing for it to be a burden. But they will effectively support you, like in a spiritually guiding way, as well. Yeah. So obviously you're still following God. Ultimately, is super important. But in terms of getting things started and having someone to support you in some kind of way, it's really important to have a church there behind you. And we're lucky; we've got multiple churches that are just full of amazing people that we've been to. Yeah. Amazing people, and they're just so encouraging, and continue to support us, and you know, talk to us and just chat to us, check in, you know, and like absolutely, they're just a great people, just great people. Awesome.
Anyway, so I think we can leave it there. We can probably leave it there. I could talk about this stuff.
Yeah, I could. This is actually we were sort of talking about doing the topic, and we're like, this could be a really massive topic. So we have to sort of decide where we're going to stop it somewhere. But I think this is probably a pretty good point.
Yeah, this is a pretty good point. Anyway, so thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, guys.
This has been fun. I'm having a good time. Always a fan of doing a podcast when it's just us two just chatting along, because it's what we do a lot.
So we had an intro. Should we do an outro?
Oh, we should, but I should do the social media first.
Oh yeah, sorry.
We'll make up an outro in a second. Oh, I'm so excited.
I like, a small part of me is like, I should sing it in reverse, but I don't think I can actually do that.
No. You can try. There's gonna be a foul.
We could just edit and like play it in reverse.
No, I want to make up a different one.
Okay.
But you can follow us on the Make Creative YouTube channel where you are right now.
Yeah. Hit that subscribe and like it. Like the video. It helps us heaps. It's massive. And like
helps. Subscribing also helps. We hit 150 subs. Let's go for 200.
Yep.
And comment as well.
Yeah. If you're a Christian comedian, reach out to us, because I'm interested that to me, I'm interested. So
you can also find us on Facebook at Make Creative. You can follow us on Instagram at Make Creative Worship. And you can find our music on most digital platforms, but Spotify and Apple Music.
Spotify, Apple Music,
Tidal.
Yeah. We're on what? It's not out yet, but Snapchat.
Yeah,
music.
Snapchat has some weird music thing that's in beta that apparently we're on.
So we're on that as well, which is exciting.
Random.
Yeah.
But let's see.
All right, here we go. We're going to try and do an outro here.
Okay. All right. I was about to beatbox.
You beatbox? No, do it.
I don't think I can.
Just pretend. Okay, stop. You're right not to. No, I'm joking. Go again.
No, I don't want to do it.
All right.
I don't know.
This has been the Make Creative podcast. I hope you enjoyed. And next time we'll be talking to a guest and have a good time. Thanks.
Because we're awesome.
We're awesome.
Have a great week.
Have a good week, guys. We'll see you in a bit.
Bye.
Joel, you going to say goodbye?
Bye.
There we go. All good.